Celebrity crushes can vary in how cute they are and how extreme they are, and a lot of different variables and factors as to how bad it is. In my opinion, it is just one of those things that I think is really, really effed up that is part of our society, where completely unattainable figures are put in a romantic light when you know that like nothing is ever going to happen. Let's say that you've got this little girl, all right? She's got like posters of some person from a boy band or Harry Styles or something. It doesn't really matter. This person is literally designed by a corporation to be attractive for the purpose of selling those posters and song record sales and all that junk. I honestly don't know where musicians get most of their money. I have literally zero idea. As this little kid, or maybe even somebody who's older, you fantasize and just romanticize this person that you can never probably even see, let alone talk to or have a conversation with, or even wave hi or get to know this person or be properly in love personally, physically with this person. It will never happen. It can never happen. It is so messed up from a fundamental level. And I wish that more people would talk about this because it's kind of an issue, honestly. It's not as big of an issue as the things that I've talked about in my two previous videos, but it's still an issue. I honestly don't know how this stuff could be limited, but I do know that it is kind of damaging for a kid, like for a little kid to have a crush on this person, but like it will never work out. You'll never be able to get to meet this person. You'll never be able to get to see this person. You have this poster in your room, and that's as far as it goes. And especially for like boy bands and junk, as obsessed as some of these people get, it is genuinely unhealthy. I think that there's a, now I know I'm going to sound super backward for saying this, but I do think that there is a bit of a distinction between how this is for girls versus guys. I'm talking about heterosexual relationships in this, by the way. I'm going to sound so incredibly backward and conservative, which I'm not, I promise. But whenever I hear about some girl who likes boy bands or something and crushes on like something like that, I don't think of it as negatively as I do as a like a teenage boy who's in love with somebody from like Blackpink or something. I'm gonna I know I sound wrong for saying that. I am just as aware as everybody else is about how wrong that sounds. I just see some guy who's simping over some K-pop girl. It just sounds worse, okay? I'm not saying it should sound worse. I do know that there are pretty good reasons for why it sounds worse, but it does. Like, it just does. I think that if you've got a bunch of posters of some female anime character versus a male anime character, it is wildly different from my perspective, at the very least. I'm not saying that either one is good, just something I've noticed about how society interprets these kind of things. But it's not just real life characters like I mentioned with anime. I think that this kind of feeling, this emptiness, this unattainable happiness, I think that this also expands in a slightly different way onto stories that you read in books, where if you read a story, when I was a kid, when I was like 7 to 11, 12, I don't know. I was reading the series Wings of Fire. I was so excited whenever the next book came out. You know, I'm just so hyped up about this stuff. Every time I would just soak up that book. That was really when I was in my reading phase, and my number one series by far, the main series I really read, to be honest, was Wings of Fire. I was so hyped up every time that they released a new book, and I was so enraptured with this world that Toichi Sutherland was making, and in hindsight, it wasn't like that good. I think I mainly liked it because like dragons. I should probably reread those books at some point. But anyways, I think in a way the series really ended around book 10. Now, there's 5 more books after that, and a 16th book is apparently in the works. It might have released. I'm not entirely sure on that one, actually. We've even got some kind of animated series that has been in and out of development hell for who knows how long by now. In my opinion, the series ended in its clearest sense on book 10. I feel like the next 5 books felt much more distant, both like figuratively and literally in the story, than the other books were. They were much less connected with the other books, and I remember the story pretty well, but the actual writing and the way the characters feel, it's been a long time since I've read those books. But reading the end of book 10, the second arc was really what I connected with as a reader. Queebly or Keebly or however you pronounce it, Moonwatcher. I don't know. There's something about that. That was the first time as a kid that I really felt any kind of connection with a romantic interest between two characters. That specifically, and like Clay and Peril is similar. Seeing these two characters together, but also the greater world, all these dynamics and all these worlds that you know so much about, yet can never, ever be a part of. This is how it's similar. Reading the end of a book or a book series, every book reader knows what this feels like. It is such a painful feeling. It is kind of two different things at once. You can find yourself smiling, you can find yourself crying at the same time because not only are you just so inexplicably happy that you know that it exists in the first place, but you can't stand to think about the fact that you can never know more. The series is over, and while it might not have technically been over at book 10, like if you want to consider book 15 the end, sure. By the time that 15 was over, I think that was about the end of my Wings of Fire phase. I kind of doubt I'm going to be picking up the 16th book. It might have already released. I don't really care, to be honest. The impact that those books had on my life is pretty immeasurable, and I just barely even think about it anymore. After a point in your life, you have to realize you have to stop crying about how you're never going to be able to go to Pyria or Pandala, and you have to realize for a second that it's not going to happen. You need to grow up. You need to move on. It is so much like anything to do with our lives as human beings. When you're 3 years old, you want to be an astronaut. Then when you're a little older, you want to be a fireman. Then when you get older, you want to start a business. You want to be a game developer. Then you want to work at McDonald's. You just want to get by the time that you get out of childhood. Because as you learn more about the world that you're in, the more that apathy starts to creep in. The more that you realize just how slim your odds are of doing the things that you actually want to do with your life. And the more that you settle for the bare minimum. I think that that's one of the most depressing parts about being human, the apathy. It only grows bigger. When you grow up, that's kind of like the peak, when you realize for a moment, I'm going to be stuck doing this for the rest of my life. I'm going to be stuck doing the same thing. There's nothing I can do. So many people get stuck in this rut like that, and honestly, you can't really blame them. If you look at the odds, most people are stuck in that life. They're stuck in this rut. They don't ever get to do what they actually want to do. It's really sad to think about how when I was younger, I had all these aspirations. I was a very ambitious person, and I would say that I still am an ambitious person, but my dreams are definitely much more grounded now. But I also understand that they're only going to get more grounded. I have all these things that I want to do with my life. I've always kind of just known that I was going to be big somehow. I don't know exactly how I was going to be big, but I just knew that I was going to be popular. I was going to be successful in some way. But the more that I live my life, the more that I get into the actual grind, the more I realize that that's not going to happen. And it's really sad, to be honest, to know that you're not going to be able to experience these things that you wanted to experience. And in that way, I think that this feeling of emptiness, this desire to know something, this desire to see more. It expands beyond books. It expands beyond celebrities. It expands into our lives. And recently it's expanded onto this show that I've watched recently, Murder Drones. I am going to be completely honest. The show's pacing is a little whack. Sometimes the dialogue and voice acting can be confusing. Just turn captions on for that, honestly. But the show's world building and design is so incredibly good. It is some of the best character design for looks and honestly personality too that I've seen in a while. It is so instantly recognizable. I don't think it would really be defined as iconic because it's not maximum level popular, but it is so incredibly well done in so many ways. I finished watching the show like 6 months ago, and during that span of time, I forgot the feeling that I felt finishing that show. It is this sorrow mixed with joy. It is so incredibly hard to describe unless if you're someone who's experienced the feeling before. Knowing that these relationships that you are so in love with, these concepts that you are so desperate to be a part of, are never going to be a reality in your life. It is so incredibly painful. And that's why, like, good media, good shows, the fact that they exist at all means that they have to end, and that in its own way is a curse. Season 2 of Murder Drones, spoilers, the creator of the show is done. He's not going to be designing any more shows from what I understand. Even if we do, it'll probably be some spin-off. Now that I'm rewatching the show with someone that I know that hasn't seen it yet, I'm getting to re-experience that feeling again. I feel it right now. Yesterday, I watched one of the last episodes, and seeing this relationship between these two characters, it's painful. It really is. It makes me feel so happy, but at the same time, so incredibly sad. I know I've said that like 6 times in this video, but I really want to hone it down. I don't know if it's just me who feels exactly like that. Let me know in the comments. Boost the algorithm. Make more people see this video. But anyways, I felt like this would be something interesting to talk about. Not necessarily like at the start of the video, I was talking about celebrity crushes, but then it kind of moved on to this human emotion. I don't know what it's called. It probably has a name, but it feels feels like several emotions combined into one. I think the difference between celebrity crushes and the way I feel about murder drones is that if you have a crush on a celebrity, the only thing you can settle for is, the ultimatum, that perfect person that you want that can never be satisfied for you, that relationship that you can never have. But I think with that show I watched, what's kept me from being maximum level depressed is that I know that I can achieve something similar in the real world. It won't be the same, it won't be perfect, it'll be a half baked. The things that I desire so badly that I got from murder drones, I might be able to get in the real world. And I think that's what people need to realize. I think that there needs to be a turning point in your mentality because so many people get their escape through social media or the stories that they watch or the books that they read. And I understand that that can be very refreshing. It's very nice to take a step away from the world that you live in. I think so many people view this world as this corrupt, evil, horrible place. And it is to some extent, but I also think that that's kind of a horrible way to think about it. Because if you think of the world that you live in as this horrible, despicable, disgusting place, in my personal opinion, that's just a bad mentality. It's going to make you set up to be depressed. If you think of this world as full of hope and possibility of improvement, of change, that is just so much better. If you can force yourself to think that way, you're just going to be such a much happier person rather than having to resort to books or TV shows or social media or anything really. I think that what people need to start realizing is that although the chances are slim, they aren't zero. They're never zero. Yes, I'd say it's pretty dang unlikely that you're going to be able to date Harry Styles, but I think that there are other dreams that you can actually feasibly attain. I think that we as a people need to stop thinking of this world, even with all the bad things that are happening, as hopeless, because believe it or not, what people might not like to tell you and what honestly my videos would not suggest is that the world that we live in is pretty nice. I know that I'm probably going to be considered insensitive or something by saying that. If we're going to be stuck on this rock, yeah, as human beings, we're going to imagine worlds better than that. But if you look at any other rock on this universe, they're all worse. They're all way worse. Like if you went onto Mars, you're going to be dead. If you went onto Venus, you're going to be dead. If you went onto any planet, minus like some of the ones that might be breathable, like that's a big might out there in the big universe, all that we've seen in the observable universe, there are very few things that could even come close to the Earth. And those places still wouldn't be as nice, man. So I guess that the end question, thought, whatever for this video is to remember to be positive. I'm not saying that it's inherently wrong to escape through a book or anything like that, but I do think that a much better mindset is to realize that your goals are possible. You can start that business. You can make that game. You can become a successful YouTuber. You can reach the dreams that you want to reach. It is possible. And personally, for me, the way that I keep myself from being depressed, I would think of myself as a very positive person. The way that I keep myself from being that way is I like to think of things as odds. I like to think of things as chances. Nothing's ever zero. There's always a chance.